So, welcome everyone, all of our membership, to this edition of Coffee with Tammy. I am your 2021 IAA HPC president, and we do have some coffee. I have my handy dandy IHPC coffee mug here. We do have coffee every once in a while with very special guests. And today, we have one of those very special guests. Angie Arora is heading up our research committee. I always feel like, okay, we're going to talk about research. I need to get my glasses on here.
Yeah.
So I can be studious. But she makes research fun. And we're hoping that as she shares what's going on in the research department, we're going to interest some of you to come and join her in this work that she's doing. So, welcome, Angie.
Thank you. I'm actually here with my Tim Hortons tea, not coffee. So, I'm from Canada.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so you're from Canada. Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. I am a social worker from Toronto, Canada. I've been practicing for well over 16 years, and I kind of work in the space of veterinary social work. And so the two key areas in that space that I'm really heavily involved with are end of life care, particularly around pet loss. So a lot of the work that I do is support people once their pets have passed, and also in veterinary wellness, which is another area that I'm super, super passionate about. And so a lot of that work has been, in frontline practice. I still facilitate pet loss support groups throughout the week, every single week, but a lot of education, consulting, and then more recently, research, which kind of brings us to the point of this conversation. And so just a little tidbit that kind of connects to a bit of what we're probably going to be talking about today is I teach at a college here in Toronto called Seneca. And we just wrapped up last year a pretty big research project with VCA Canada, in which we were looking at people's experiences with their veterinary teams during their pet's end of life. And as a result of that research, a lot of really different findings came up that are connected to some of the work that we're going to be exploring in the research committee. Particularly two areas, one around this kind of misunderstanding or maybe a lack of like a nuanced understanding of what hospice and palliative care really looks like, both from the perspective of pet parents as well as how veterinary teams are kind of delivering that information, and as well as some gaps with in-home euthanasia as well.
Wonderful. Well, you have been an amazing addition to our volunteer core of people who come together. IHPC is a complete volunteer organization. So it takes people like you who just step up with something that you have an interest in and help us move the needle in the organization in a direction that we're trying to go. And you've done a fabulous job because I've been on and around the board since about 2014. And research has been a struggle for this
Mm.
organization because it was almost like trying to find the perfect starting place in such a big, vast
Yeah.
arena where actually not that much has been done in our pioneering field. So you have come in and I feel like just have stabilized this committee for us and given us some grounding so that we can really move forward and start here. So first of all, how big is your committee?
Our committee is currently two people, but we are small but fierce. And just kind of giving that context, I think, is so important. We're still kind of finding our ground, which I think makes it a super exciting time for anybody that's interested to join. Like you can kind of come on and really help shape the direction. And I like what you said about like, you almost don't even know where to start. And as a committee, we've kind of sat with that as well. I think when people hear research, there's also a lot of varying understandings of what that means, because there are so many different ways of doing research. And so just to give a sense as to what our committee is looking at, one of the goals that we've come up with, and obviously this is like a longer term goal, is how do we take, albeit the very limited research that's currently been done in this space, whether we're thinking more broadly of end of life or more specifically hospice and palliative, and then kind of create this space to showcase it. So before we even really start thinking about generating new knowledge and information, which is part of research, how do we kind of take stock of what's already there, and then become this platform to showcase it? And Colleen's done a really good job of helping us to kind of frame this as a mixture of both academic research and product research. And that was a really important way for me to shift my lens on it too, right? Because I'm in academia heavily. And so we have this tendency to kind of think of academic research, and that can get really overwhelming for people,
Yeah.
especially if it's something you haven't done before. Just
Yeah.
the process of it can seem so, how do I even start it? But the other lens that we are looking at is product research. So for companies that are working in this space, whether it's informal or formal testing or research that they've done, like speaking to their clients, speaking to their users, and then providing a space to showcase that. I think that that's one lens of the committee. And that's pretty big. Like you said, there is a gap, but the collating of the existing research and then finding ways to disseminate it both to pet parents and to membership, it's going to need a lot of hands on deck.
Mhm.
So that's a really concrete area in which I think the committee could really benefit from having, just, you don't have to be an expert in research. I think that's the piece. Like, I'm not an expert in research. Both Nancy and I, who are members of the committee, while we've done research, we're looking at this really from a broad lens. So anybody that even just has an interest is welcome to join. So there's that piece of looking at what's already been done. But then we are also trying to engage into what's more known as community-based research. So this doesn't involve, the layers that can kind of happen with academic research, but just to give people a taste in case this interests you, we are exploring the idea right now of doing a pretty informal survey, specifically with pet parents, on their experiences with in-home euthanasia. We really kind of want to get in there and better understand that experience because we know it's so nuanced. And like you said, there's really just kind of this big gap, right, in knowing what people's experiences have been. So that's going to need some hands on deck as well. And then the second area is really of the survey is trying to look at what are pet parents' current understandings of animal hospice and palliative care, right? Like, are there some misconceptions that we can help to clear up? Is there a better understanding of it than maybe we know? And so the understanding, like people's understandings of it is one piece. And then we're really hopeful that we can also tap into pet parents who have experienced hospice and palliative care options for their pets, like to better understand what those experiences have been like so that we can learn from what's working well and really kind of create these best practices to keep doing it, but then to also look at gaps to see where some improvements can be made.
Angie, this work that you are embarking on is such an incredible member benefit to the
Yeah.
IHPC. This is, our members join because they want education and they
Mm.
want to know how to do their work better. And without going upstream and finding out what the experience is like and what people are really looking for, it's very hard to customize and craft a delivery system that's going to meet that need when you don't really understand that need. And I'm
Mm.
just excited that the organization is at a point right now with your leadership that's going to be allowing us to start in earnest swimming
Mm.
upstream where we are going to have a better idea of what those needs are and what people are looking for. So I want to thank you, first of all, for raising your hand and being willing to volunteer. I mean, it is an extra piece of time in your very busy schedule that you already have, but I hope that even for you as a member participating in this, that this is going to provide you great information and meaning as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I don't even know how you kind of, for me personally, just with the different hats that I wear, it's hard to really kind of talk about these issues without understanding the lived experience of people, right? So for people like yourself, you're right on the front lines. You see this all the time. You know what you can kind of just tell by being in a room with somebody what their experiences are like. But for those that maybe are not as immersed as you are, and want to better understand, I think this is a perfect opportunity to, and the IHPC's like reach is so large that we're really excited as well that it's not going to take much for us to be able to draft the survey and get some feedback and send it out. I feel like so much of the hard work's already been done in having this really, really large, strong, um, like pool of connections, more particularly to pet parents, that it's just kind of like that pool's there. Here's some questions we have, share with us. And because by sharing, not only is it an opportunity, I think, for people to talk about what their own experiences have been like, but you're doing it in this kind of scope of allowing for improvements to happen within this space, which I think most people would probably want to be part of.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, um, you were talking about my experience as a practitioner with Angel's Paws, and we do, our service is a 24/7 true mirror to a human hospice. That's how we do it.
Yeah.
My goal is with the work of the research committee that as you go out and assess the needs and wants of the pet parents, that within our organization, we start to be able to identify each other as members who are doing things similarly so that we can band together. It is such a unique field that it feels like we as members, even though that we're 1,400 strong at this point, I think all of us feel a little bit like very isolated and, voices that are very distant to most people. When we still say pet hospice to some
Mm,
people, they tilt their head and they're like, what? That's available? I had no idea.
yeah.
Still today in 2021,
Yeah.
that is still the experience that's going on out there.
Yeah.
So for us to find other members within our organization who approach our work in the same way so that we can collaborate and brainstorm and then actually implement some of this rich information that you're going to be providing from pet parents of what they're looking for.
Right.
I mean, it just brings us full circle. And so very, I mean, I'm ecstatic with
I love that, right? Though, because like it's about how do you foster and kind of continue to build the community that's already there, but really start to take it to another level. And like as you were talking, I couldn't help but again, my head goes back to this research that we just completed. And I remember, in speaking with my co-investigator, Kirsty Clarita, when people ask us, what were your biggest takeaways from your research, this piece on hospice and palliative comes up for both of us because what saddened us was that there were so many missed opportunities. Like we got from our data, what we were able to ascertain, and we had predominantly people responding from Canada, but as well as from the States, was that it just wasn't being talked about early enough. And so when we were asking the questions on, did your veterinary provider, I can't remember the questions, but did your veterinary provider introduce this as an option? A lot of people's responses were no, euthanasia was the only option, which led us to believe that euthanasia was probably the only option because it wasn't, hospice and palliative care options weren't discussed in a timely or early enough way. So there's this community that I hear you on, which I think is so huge. And then there's also how do we fill this really big gap that can bring so much comfort to pets and their parents alike.
well, and as you're talking, what strikes me as our practitioners who are often solopreneurs. I mean, I love
Yeah.
Colleen Ellis, our executive director's terminology for that they're
Mhm.
solopreneurs, but
Mhm.
getting, for their community to even find that they're there and doing something, even in the area of home euthanasia,
Right.
which is what they may be doing, for them to embrace the hospice concept and begin building out a team that would
Yeah.
bring a legitimate hospice into their area,
Yeah.
they could then go and educate their bricks and mortar veterinarians in their towns and start being the educator for the concept. And then then those regular DVMs are going to be more likely to share that with their clients. So it also will, your work will ultimately give some ideas on how to get the phone ringing for some of our members. I think for some of our established members, the phone ringing is no problem. All of us are, just overwhelmed really with our phone ringing at this point. But
Yeah.
for our newer members who are, and we want to attract as many new members as we can, because allowing a pet to say, be able to transition from home, and allowing a pet parent to be able to say goodbye in the sanctity of their own home and not drive to the vet or drive home from the vet is an amazing, gift that I think this organization, ultimately the members of the organization, give. But our newer members need that support and need ideas of how do they get established and known in their community. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so no, I love that because it's almost like you have to have this multi-pronged approach because if the conversations around it are starting, then that means pet parents' interest in it is going to probably skyrocket, which therefore means that the demand has to be able to keep up with the interest. Like I think about myself right now, and I've got two seniors at home with me, and I know that the time is inevitable, and I'm just really fortunate to be connected with somebody who I know specializes in this area in my community, who is going to be my go-to when the time is here, so that I can have this, peaceful experience as possible at home where they're comfortable. But I can only imagine how I would feel if I knew that it was an option, but then nobody was here to provide that service.
Right. Yes. Yes. We need to spread like fire throughout the land, throughout the world, and really make this available. And we're on our way. We have grown with our membership. We're up to 1,400 at this point. It was not that when I started in 2014, and
Wow.
definitely not that when it started with just a few members, in 2009. So. Well, Angie, I do have one last burning question for you before I let you go. I'm asking all of the people who are agreeing to have coffee with Tammy. So I need to know, what is something from a self care point of view that you personally could commit to, that you would do between now and our conference in September, which, by the way, conference in September this year, 2021, is in Tampa. It is going to be amazing. We are getting back to the future. That's what we are doing. We are putting the pandemic behind us. It is going to be so great. We are going to be networking like crazy with all of our friends and colleagues. So if you're listening to this, get your ticket. Get your ticket, get your room booked right now. Get there. It's going to be great. So between now and conference, Angie, what can you commit to that you're going to do from a self-care point of view for you?
For me, I mean, you know what? I teach courses on self-care, so this one's hard to choose one on. But the one that I've been landing on lately is kind of not a typical self-care piece, but around continuing to build my emotional literacy. So being able to kind of really name the emotions that I'm feeling, and allowing myself some space to feel the feels, to process them, to let them move, and to learn from them. And that's what I am personally committed to right now in my life.
Beautiful. That is beautiful. And I'm going to hold your feet to the fire in September. We're going to see how you did with that. And
Love
if
it.
you can think of some specific examples and wins that you had as a result of doing that, that would be awesome. And so that's going to conclude our Coffee with Tammy edition with our amazing resource committee lead, Angie Arora. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.